Here we go. We're getting in deep this week.
Deep, philosophical.
Deep We're getting metaphysical.
Meditational, because I just read the Meditations. My name is Taylor, and I have read the book.
My name is Evan, and I have not read the book.
And this is Illiterate, and it is book recaps to make you sound
cooler at parties.
Let's jump on in. The Meditations by ya boy, Marcus Aurelius. That's not how you pronounce it. It's Marcus Aurelius.
I'm not even going to try.
Roman emperor. Just to preface everything, this is a book about philosophy, which is a very complex topic, and I will definitely butcher the concepts because people spend their lives and hundreds of thousands of years, that's not true, thousands of years talking about these things, questioning these things. All that to say, we have 7 sections that we're going to go through. Number 1, just a quick and dirty summary, some historical context, some philosophical context, and then we got our big 5 sections, topics of discussion.
What are they?
They are being a Roman emperor in lowercase. What's that all about? Thinking on the bad stuff?
Quotations around bad.
Who knows what that's going to be? Diary as a useful reflection. We're talking about diaries. Mental health, modern and historically.
Hot topic.
And then the last one, being a Roman emperor in all caps.
All caps, being Roman emperor.
What does that mean? So those, and then of course, what you're all here for, the end, the recap, how to sound cooler at parties.
We got them for you.
Once we've distilled it, the actionable steps, what are you going to do? What are you going to talk about?
Let's go.
Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, from 161 to 180 AD. For 20 years, he was the Emperor of Rome, cruising around, basically leader of the free world. Considered the last of the 5 good emperors. His nickname within his own lifetime, people were calling him this, was the Philosopher Emperor, or just the Philosopher. So that's what he was known for, hence the philosophy book, right?
5 good ones. So
then after that, it was his son Commodus, which, if you know anything about classic action movies, they're in Gladiator.
Yeah.
So Commodus is the douche who does all the gladiation stuff, thinks he's... yeah. So that's a bit of historical context. But those are real people. Marcus Aurelius was his dad, who was the last one, and then Commodus comes in, screws it all up for everybody, and then he gets assassinated. He becomes what's known as the 5 emperors in a year or something. Yeah. So he's the start of that. So Marcus Aurelius is the last good one, and then they have 5 in a year that just get lopped off for their own inadequacy. So this book, Meditations, there was no intentions for this thing to be published. There's no actual title. Meditations is totally made up. There's another Greek translation of the title, which literally translates as to himself, which is why this is so badass, because he had no intention of it. It's just his personal journal, mostly while he was out on military campaigns in the last 1/8 of his life while he's emperor, because the Roman emperors were warrior kings. They actually went out and fought among their people. They just didn't hang back in Rome. So he was out on campaign. This is him writing about his life, what he's thinking, his thoughts, all that stuff. That being said, there's no chronological order. There's no structure whatsoever. He's just writing it like a man among men. So this is one of the things that people don't like about it, which I really like about it. There is no literary style. It's very repetitive. There is nothing but as if you were going to write a journal about how you felt about things.
Yeah. So you got the physical book here.
I do have the physical book.
How many pages is it?
This one is 199.
Oh, wow. Not bad.
Yeah. But it's short and square.
Yeah, you got a little book here.
Yeah. You could read it in a day.
You could read it in a day.
Yeah.
How many hours do you think it did take you?
Like 3.
Yeah.
Well, the first time I read it, I just blasted through it. Yeah. And like I said, there is no structure to it whatsoever. It's just his quips and thoughts and almost like bullet points of a journal of what's going on.
Can you show me read
so
an example.
Bullet point number 1 at the very beginning of the book. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil, but I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. And then just next bullet point, don't be ashamed to need help. Like a soldier storming a wall, you have a mission to accomplish. And if you've been wounded and you need a comrade to pull you up, so what?
Wow. And this is just
boom, bullet points. And then bullet point number, next bullet point, straight, not straightened. whatever the hell that means to him. But he wrote it, you know what I mean? He was just like, these are my little bullet points. This is what's going on. Yeah. And so I would honestly not read it through in 3 hours. Just flip it open, take something, these little quips.
It's like the perfect bathroom book almost.
Yeah.
You know, where you just like sit it down on the...
So then be like, man, I feel like shit and I am shitting.
Let me just...
So it is essentially the original blog / vlog of all time. If you look up diary on Wikipedia, this is the first instance.
Wow.
Yeah, because he was writing it in 120 AD. That's the first record of anybody's firsthand accounts of what's going on that we have on record.
No, were these... Was it like a consistent record, or was it like daily accounts? Were these?
No. Like I said, it's just all over the place. There's no, and it's spurious how these things came about, because the first real mention of this that had been handed down and passed down, the actual first thing is in 900 AD. So 800 years after. Yeah. There's some bishop that has it, and the first recorded instance of it is him sending it to one of his friends and saying, hey, I have this really fucked up copy of this thing. I'm recording it and retranscribing it because it's falling apart. Here, you have it. And so that is kind of, but that's also when we have more recorded stuff. I mean, this is so long ago, but it's crazy that it exists and that it's just him out on the campaign.
So it kind of got published out of, I mean, it's an artifact, basically. It was already an artifact by the time it ever got actually transcribed or edited at all.
Right, and converted into, so that's one of the things is the translations. So I'm really partial, I don't know why I said it like that, to...
Did you have a glitch?
I like the Gregory Hayes translation of it, and it's by the Modern Library, which matters not at all. Forget them. But it was on the bestsellers list, whichever one, New York Times, something, for 2 weeks in 2002. So there's a resurgence of this. And to me, whatever you get out of it, you get out of it. So the Gregory Hayes translation is what I go off of. I've circled and written and underlined a million things.
Is that the like the common public?
It's the most. It's the most recent one. I think it's the most. It's the most popular one on Amazon. There's ones that are more literary or use older language or change the kind of syntax with which it's done. But yeah, go for that one.
If you're wondering, you can get a paperback copy, a used paperback copy for $499 on Amazon. So why don't you go pick that up?
That's not the normal price. Was there any reason for that? Or
I think it was a very old edition of it. It was just a very, very like priceless version of it. But
not the original.
No, excuse me. It's the only way to read it.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Cool. So first topic for today, for the meditations, is about just bare bones being a Roman emperor. So Marcus Aurelius, we can just call him Mark or Marcus, the philosopher king. He went through the typical channels of becoming an emperor at the time, getting tutored, hobnobbing with the elite. He got it handed down to him. I don't know all the particulars of it, but the classic way that you become an emperor.
As one does.
And he was in a very high esteemed family and all that kind of stuff. So kind of where his philosophy energy comes from, hundreds of years before, where his philosophy is called stoicism. So there was a guy, Zeno, who taught it from the stoa, which is the Greek word for porch, which is a public setting in Athens, which was rare in terms of the philosophy. You went to a school and you were trained. This guy was the first guy to just be out in public and saying, this is how you should look at the world, and here's what you should do.
Screaming it on the corners.
Yeah, so it became stoicism. So he derived his work, just for a little context, from the Cynics, which is an earlier progression of stoicism, which is just rejecting all the trappings of life that are not directly associated with virtue, which is where we get the word cynical. It's like nothing matters. But he's just saying nothing matters except this, but they were more like, I'm not going to have a job, I'm not going to wear clothes, I'm just going to be all over the place. Stoics was a progression of that, where they're like, nah, you can probably still function in society, but this is what's important in life, and this is what you should focus on. So
the factoid about cynical is interesting. How did that come about again?
So the precursor to Stoics was Cynics, which is another philosophy where we get these words from. You think of cynical, that guy, he's so cynical. He doesn't believe in anything. This isn't, or she, this isn't real. This doesn't matter, that kind of thing. It comes from that philosophy.
Okay.
Again, philosophy, just the lens with which you view the world and how you respond to it.
Everybody has their own.
So you could take it at that, but that's where it came from. And then after that came Stoics, which we get the word stoic, meaning very reserved, very emotionless, which we'll get into how that relates to Marcus here. So that's where he comes from. And that's what his daily journal, this Meditations, is about, is him reckoning with that philosophy and just going through what he thinks about things. Marcus is kind of the end of the Stoic writings. In between Zeno and Marcus, there's some other dudes, but the other big player is Epictetus. Epictetus was born a slave and was a slave for a big portion of his life and then became a Stoic and espoused this philosophy. So I find it very interesting, the duality between the fact that the two biggest proponents after the guy who created it, formulating this philosophy, are a slave and an emperor, saying, hey, this is how you should look at the world. And one of them is at the lowest place of all time, and the other one controlled everything.
The entire spectrum.
Yeah, and they both, over the span of 100 years, espoused, hey, this is how you should do it.
Wow.
This is the way to look at things. So that's what it's like being an emperor and where he comes from.
That's wild.
So tying into that, the next thing, mostly what he's concerned about in this journal, the Meditations, is Stoicism. Big category of that is what I would call thinking on the bad stuff, bad being in quotes, because that's just another term we use to describe things. We're going to kind of go down into a philosophical rabbit hole and then come back out on the other side of that rabbit hole. So the biggest kind of tenet of this is understanding things that are within our power or things that are not within our power. And that's the biggest meditation to go off of in life for them. So we're going to go into the rabbit hole about existence right now, and then we'll come out on the other side of what that means. So play with me here. If you had a God who is traditionally all-knowing, all-seeing, everything, what is the only thing that they lack?
Wonder.
No.
What?
Limitation.
Limitation?
Yeah. So if you're everything, then you can't be anything. So being requires limitation. If you exist,
it means you cannot be that.
You can't be everything. Yeah. So by the very nature that you exist, you have to limit. So then, following that train of thought, what does limitation create? Suffering. Right? Because you can't do something. So you're going to suffer from that. But that's the benefit of existing. So that also is a very Buddhist, that's the tenet of Buddhism, is that existence is suffering. Now, if you believe that precept, you could also not believe that at all. That's fine.
Right.
But that's the start of a philosophy,
right,
to say existence is suffering, right? That is the natural state. If you want to exist, you're going to suffer. So what they're saying is, now let's look at that. Again, going back to things that are within our control and things that are not within our control. Having being suffering, you need a justification for that suffering. Are there times when I feel my suffering is justified or not? That's your living in your daily life. So they believed that virtue justifies being unto itself. It's the only thing that is an end unto itself. Virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, discipline, all those things. Some people might say happiness is the end unto itself.
Right.
That justifies the suffering. Some people might say, that's where philosophy comes from. So thinking on the bad stuff is one of the precepts of saying what is in my control, what is not in my control. Some things are up to us. What they believed was our judgments and our actions. What's interesting about that is not our feelings, because our feelings come about.
Yeah, they're just emerged.
They're just a thing. But our judgments and our actions are within our control. To a certain extent, our actions are within our control. So there's some variance to that. And then that kind of ties into the modern version. But what's not up to us? Everything else.
Right.
Historical actions, the weather, what somebody else says about us, our predisposition in life, literally at whether we die.
Yeah.
Right? And so all of those things then kind of get lumped into what you would consider, what they would consider, this is again the terminology, an indifferent. So it's like, okay, well, if I'm not in control of that, then it's an indifferent, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing, and the last little thing about this is isolating both of those. It's like existing creates suffering,
Mm-hmm.
isolating, I want to have these virtues, but you have to have the indifference. You have to have the things that are not in your control in order to have those virtues. It can't exist in a vacuum. Like you can't just have virtues without the other thing.
Right.
So that's why I prefer, and why this resonates with so many people as opposed to other philosophies, because it's like a potter being at the potter's wheel without the clay. That's why I'm not as partial to just monks sitting on a mountaintop for 20 years, because you need somebody yelling at you at line in the grocery store in order for you to understand wisdom and justice and all of these things. So I always say the rules of the game are to figure out the game. Yeah. And that's what Stoicism is all about. It's saying, okay, how can I use these things? So that's where thinking on the bad stuff comes into play, because they're all about, again, shouting from the porch, here's what you should do with this information. Cool, now I know these things about life. Mm-hmm. What am I going to do? So meditations, back to the book. God damn it, is Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, top of the world, saying, here's what I'm struggling with, what's in my control and what's not in my control on a daily basis at random all over the time. The Stoics had, all of these things that they would use as guides and tools and tips to help them figure out that stuff. So one of them, recitation, memorizing things. They have these pithy sayings. A lot of times if you'll see some quote or some know thyself or something that's descended from the Stoics, who just said, I need to remember these things when I get into this situation and I get really angry and I'm trying to drop the latency between the feeling and understanding that, and then what can I control my reaction and judgment on that. Journaling was huge at the beginning and end of the day, again, so you can put in the work and say, where did I fall short, where did I do well, what was in my that kind of thing. So that's what he did in this. Assent of thoughts is not just going through, like, thoughts are a tool. They are not the end. Like, being is the thing and thoughts are a tool to being. So bracket your thoughts without judgment, again, saying this is what this is, and then assess what is and isn't in your control. Last kind of thing is negative premeditation, the bad thought. So it sounds really savage, and this is where people are saying, it's not optimistic. But it's very optimistic. So you imagine, because you say, what is and isn't in my control? Most everything. So I want to prep, like you'd prepare and play scrimmage games before you actually get onto the field. Yeah. If your kid gets hit by a bus, you're not going to be prepared for that, and it's going to destroy you. God. So prepare for that by imagining your kid getting hit by a bus. And then also, it makes your life a hell of a lot better, because when you're at the breakfast table with him, you're not going to be pissed off at him, because you're going to be like, he could be hit by a bus, and so I'm going to appreciate this breakfast infinitely more. And then when he doesn't, you're like, cool, no harm, no foul. Right. I'm also not super happy that he's not, because that was not in my control. It just is what it is. Right. This is life. This is the baseline.
Appreciate it while it's here right now.
Right. But I got to practice that. So putting that negative,
putting it into action.
And then the last thing, which gets a lot of guff, is asceticism, which means voluntarily choosing discomfort, which is where it comes from the Cynics, where the Cynics would say, all that matters is virtue and nothing else. And so we're going to purposefully take cold showers and wear rags and just scrape by.
So like illicit?
Those things, because that was the only thing that mattered, was the virtues. And so all of the other stuff should be removed from your life. Versus the Stoics are saying, no, that's the clay to play around with. Right?
Well, your peaks and valleys are leveled out, so it doesn't feel like you're on some sort of roller coaster, so that when you don't get that big high, it doesn't feel like some sort of big disappointment. And when you don't hit that big low, you're almost like psyched about it. Like, look, I didn't. So it's people like riding that baseline of being normal and trying to just stay as flatline as possible.
Well, see, and so that's kind of the misconception where that energy comes from, is people think it's cold-hearted, emotionless drudgery, but it's the opposite of that internally. It's feel all the feelings, lean into them, say thank you, anger, thank you, jealousy, thank you, disability, whatever it might be, for giving me the clay to work with, and then deciding what do you do with that. It's the internal that you do. And the ultimate sage, which doesn't exist, which is what you aspire to, is, like I said, removing the latency between. It might take you 2 weeks to get over that anger. A sage would instantaneously just transfer that to, this is an indifferent. What's within my control? How do I react to that? What's the greater good? What are the virtues that I'm trying to espouse through this? Wisdom, justice, courage, self-discipline, all of that stuff. And the other thing is they in terms of thinking the bad thoughts, it's a way to look at it. So like Try it for a month. Try these things. If it makes your life shittier, you don't have to look at the world that way.
Right.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
You know, this guy did it this way, but they also weren't super into, hey, this is the only way of going about it. They're like, this works for me. This is great, but just try it out. We're giving you the tools in the practical daily life. And that's why it's so tight, I think, and why this book resonates with people. It's because it's about taking action in a consistent daily practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it in the book that every day he's trying to fulfill this daily practice for nobody but himself. He's writing down how he's feeling about things, what he's going on. It's repetitive as hell. So it's not necessarily a book that you just want to sit down and read, but it's cool also to see 17 times he's worried about the judgments of somebody else, you know. Oh, this is, you know,
right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it could be really useful for just mental process, because there's so much that I feel like I have to just sit down and kind of marinate in and let feelings emerge, let thoughts emerge out of it before I take an action. So yeah.
Third section, very small. We don't have to talk about it that much.
I hate it already.
He hates it. But it is very useful. Diary as a useful reflection. So the whole bigger point of the thing.
Are you telling me that your smallest blurb in this whole thing might be the number one largest takeaway of the entire text?
Yeah, probably. Diary as a useful reflection. He wrote it down. It's one of the central Stoic ways of practicing.
This is the first record of a diary?
Yes.
Jesus.
I know. The proof is in the pudding. It's part of the journey. Writing down is half of it, remembering what you're doing. So that is what this book is. And that's all I have to say about that. Do you have any thoughts?
No, it's just fantastic. I mean, it's wild.
I know.
The genesis of diaries, of just like writing down what happened to you today.
What's up, YouTube? I'm just...
So we went all the way from, 160 AD, dealing with the same thoughts and problems every day, day in, day out, and talking about process on how to smash that subscribe.
Yeah. It's wild. I'm fascinated by it. That's why it's one of my favorite books, is because it's the diary of a Roman emperor
that no one was ever supposed to see.
Dear diary. Yeah. Fourth section. Are you ready?
I've never been more ready in my life.
Fourth section, mental health. That's what we're talking about. Modern, historical, over time.
Now.
Here, everywhere. It sounds crazy. It does work. It's an old philosophy. But people have gotten good use out of it. There's a particular mental health field called cognitive behavioral therapy, which started as a legitimate clinical approach in the 60s or thereabouts, heavily influenced on this philosophy and way of thinking, used to treat PTSD, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, eating disorders, lots of stuff. A lot of people like it because it doesn't have any of the side effects of medication, which does the same thing. So there's a famous dude, James Stockdale, who is known to use maybe not cognitive behavioral therapy, but Stoic philosophy. He survived for 7 years in a Vietnam prisoner of war camp.
Oh, God.
I think maybe 7 years. He became the vice admiral of the U.S. Navy. He was shot down, or this plane got hit as he was flying over Vietnam doing something, fighting.
Sounds like John McCain.
And then, basically, I think John McCain also used similar thought structures and beliefs to get through it. But he was shot down, ejected himself from the thing. Just what a crazy moment to be parachuting down, knowing they're going to grab you and put you. And so he has the 6 minutes that he's in the air to be like, what is my life going to be like for the next 7 years or whatever? So he said, and this is quote from one of his books, he said, I whispered to myself as he's there being parachuted down, I'm leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus, which, as we said, was the middle guy in between Zeno and Marcus, saying, like, this is what it's about.
Oh, man.
Epictetus was the slave. Yeah, so he's like, this is what I'm going to go through. One of these things, kind of going back to the cognitive behavioral therapy, is somebody asked him who didn't make it out of Vietnam. And he was like, oh, that's easy, the optimists.
Oh, wow.
Because he said they would say, oh, we're going to be out by Christmas. And then Christmas would come. And then Christmas would go. And they said, oh, we're going to be out by Easter. And then Easter would come and Easter would go. And they died of a broken heart, not because of the situation. So even in that having the negative visualization. He said it's a balance, though, like you said, to confuse the faith that you will prevail in the end. You have to have that longer arc, but also the realism of
I need to get
this is what it is. Yeah, this is the current reality. What is in my control?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I believe in. Never lose that. But also, this is what I can do right now.
Is there a direct connection between, other than just the school of thought? Like, have any of those people ever spoken about this book in particular?
About the meditations?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of public figures, a lot of people in popular culture and sports and literature and everything have, like Bill Clinton said this is his favorite book.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that have, in positions of power or lack thereof or whatever, rise and fall, have referenced this book. It was kind of an under the record, not that well-known thing. There's a guy, Ryan Holiday, who came out with a book called The Obstacle is the Way in the mid-2000s, maybe 2010, something like that, within the past 15 years. And he really popularized that. There was a lot of NFL coaches that used it and bought a ton of copies and gave it to all their players and all that stuff. So that really bolstered it. He came out with a second book called Ego is the Enemy, which is also based on Stoic principles.
Okay.
And then has a website called The Daily Stoic where they send out you emails for daily practices and whatnot. So that's
cool.
Popularized in sort of a modern Stoic context for the general public, where you could find that book at an airport and just get into it. And then the other one, another airport book that got popularized, which is not directly related, but it's Mark Manson's book with the big orange cover that's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Which got very, very popular.
Right, I heard of that
a couple of years ago. Exactly. So that is also a lot of his methodologies. He doesn't explicitly say it, but it's based on those principles. And the title, now you can see, if you know what to look for, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Yeah. It's not giving a fuck. It's what are the things that are in my control and what are the things that are not in my control. And it's a very subtle art. Yeah. So that's kind of where it fits in nowadays.
Very cool.
And then the final last section, your favorite section.
My favorite section, finally I'll know.
The final section, being Roman emperor. Being a Roman emperor. Little side note, there's a difference between what I call a stage whisper, which is whispering as loud as you can, and then a whisper yell, which is yelling as quietly as you can. So the stage whisper, is like, hey, I have a question. And then the whisper yell is like, hey, I have a question.
Those are
very subtle.
My favorite dramatic inflections.
Yeah, the stage whisper and I don't know. Stage whisper is definitely a thing. Whisper yell is not the right term, but if you do know what it is, please.
I know immediately.
I need to know immediately. So, like I said, it's his personal journal. So the nuts and bolts of it, just some interesting things I thought that he wrote down. The first section that whoever cordoned it off into is called Debts and Lessons, and it's just listing a list of people and basically things that he's grateful for, what he's learned from them, the traits he wants to emulate, which I did in my own life. I was like, this is tight. Let me write Mom, Dad, the library, Evan.
Yeah.
Who just like, and what I learned from them, the fact that he's the emperor, he's the god of this universe, and he's writing down. And so it was just so interesting because it was like from his grandfather to his mentors and just even tiny things. So he put from one of his mentors as a thing for lending me a copy of Epictetus's lectures. He's like, oh, this is just like this tiny little thing. This guy loaned me a book and I'm grateful for that because it changed my life. And this is what I'm
for sharing, for getting me through last winter.
Yeah.
Couldn't have done it without
or he put Alexander, which we have no idea who Alexander is, to this guy, not to be constantly telling people I'm too busy unless I really am. So that's what he learned from this guy.
Sounds like he got a job in Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, that's just what he was interested in. Or he wrote to the gods that I wasn't more talented in rhetoric or poetry. I felt if I was making better progress that I might have never given them up. And so he's grateful that he stopped caring so much about those things and is glad that it didn't come naturally to him because it wasn't important to him to focus on those things right now in his life.
Yeah, because he ended up leading.
Right. This was sentimental, that even though she died young, at least my mother spent her last years with me. And then this one I thought was just kind of silly, but so modern. He put that I didn't lose my virginity too early and didn't enter adulthood until it was time.
Interesting.
Like, what a great, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he's writing this as a 65-year-old man on
Yeah.
the warpath after being emperor for 15 years. So, like, but it's just wild. That kind of personal, like, uppercase being an emperor, that's what it is. So here's just some other passages, some little things that I thought were interesting that kind of tied into, oh, this is what a journal, the first diary is. So he said, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of? I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought in the world to do. Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? But it's nicer here. So you were born to feel nice instead of doing things and experiencing them? People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it and even forget to wash or eat. Is helping others less valuable to you, not worth your effort? Just insane.
Wow.
Just the most real, honest him being like, I freaking suck. I can't even get out of bed in the morning. And then again, talking about how repetitive it is, I counted 3 or 4 more times he mentions trouble getting out of bed in the morning and how
Really?
that is a comfort.
wow.
You know, the like, oh, I want to stay under the covers. It's like,
It's nicer in here. I don't want you.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is what life is about?
yeah.
No, it's like that's really cool.
Yeah. So that is all uppercase being an emperor.
Yeah.
Is just those
Yeah.
personal diatribes about what he's struggling with over and over and over again. And to see it written over and over and over again
Yeah.
is so human.
And when there's only a little milk left in the jug, go ahead and finish it. Don't put it back in the
Yeah. Do the right thing. Yeah.
When you're done
Yeah.
urinating, put the lid down.
And change the screen on Netflix back to the selection of profiles and don't just leave it on your profile.
When you put a new toilet paper roll on, make sure it rolls out. Not in.
You've done this 12 times, Marcus. He sounds like Batman for some reason.
Wait, I don't know.
All right. So these are the top 5 things to talk about at parties
Actionable.
relating to those you're going out tonight. What do you want to talk about? Case in point, number 1, the big one, diary as a useful reflection.
Oh, easy.
The cool party topic. This is the oldest record of a diary. This is the first vlog Logan Paul gets brought up.
It all starts
if he's
here.
still relevant.
Yeah.
Anything people are like, oh, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Be like, do you know who was the OG?
Yeah, you don't know shit about Marcus Aurelius.
He was out here in the game doing his own thing, writing shit down, not even for nobody. And now it's changing lives. You want to change lives? Boom. Here he is.
How many YouTube views would he have?
So many.
Oh my God.
The Emperor. Just, hey guys, I'm out on the warpath. Yeah, talk about that. Number 2, lowercase being a Roman emperor, just what it's all about. Movies are coming up, classic movies. You want to get in the game, you want to talk about something? Bring up Gladiator.
Yeah.
And then historical. Oh, the leadership, not the shitty guy, but the other guy was Marcus. He wrote a book, super cool, etc. Gladiator. It's awesome. Number 3, thinking about the bad stuff, the actual mental models. So let's just talk about you're at this party. Just, you don't have to do it for a month. Do it for tonight.
Yeah.
The daily practices to institute, recitation. If there's something that comes up, your judgment, think of a mantra to go off of. Journaling. Don't journal at the party, but maybe after the party, be like, what went wrong? What didn't go wrong? What rubbed me the wrong way?
What were you expecting going in?
What did I crush? Assent of thoughts. Again, if you have a thought, if you have a feeling, look at it from an objective perspective first, then think, oh, what can I do about this? Negative premeditation.
Ooh.
This is great. Before you go out tonight, be like, oh, I'm going to hit on somebody and they're going to reject me.
Yeah.
Or my Uber is going to be late and go the wrong way. Or none of my friends are going to be there. Or this is going to be a terrible party. Then when you get there
And those things don't
and
happen.
one of those things happens, you're like, cool, I'm prepared. I practiced for the game of life. And then if it's awesome, cool too.
Even
I'm ready for the next time when it's might not go. What, you know, that's just the way it is. And then I wouldn't do asceticism necessarily because that would be like not going to the party, withholding yourself from that experience. But maybe another time. Don't
going
go.
and walking out in the cold.
Being on your own. Walk in the cold. Don't take an Uber. Spend 30 years to get there. Number 4, mental health. Modern and historically, people are talking crazy about mental health, which is good. It's great.
Oh,
it's
man,
awesome.
finally.
So bring into the game CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Have you guys heard about this? People are talking about, oh, I'm thinking about seeing a therapist. Definitely encourage them,
Mhm.
things like that. Or if you're thinking about it, but these kind of things get brought up, say, oh, I heard of this thing. It's just as good as drugs, apparently, as getting things done. It involves taking actionable steps.
I want to
Whatever.
step out on a limb here because, and I don't want to say that that women won't find useful things in here, because obviously it's universal and they will. But there's a particular debate going on in this country about men's mental health,
Right.
and I think that this book actually could have a huge window into that, because this is a man of ultimate man. When we think of
Right.
man, this is kind of what we're thinking about without thinking about it.
Yeah.
This is, I just saw a meme the other day of just like SpongeBob going to, is driving to the grocery store to get, his candy or whatever, but listening to like rap music talking about drugs and murder, because we all think that we're the king, we're the emperor,
Right.
we're dealing with the biggest problems. And that things are serious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might not be the case, but this guy actually was there, and he's still thinking about, man,
I can't get up today.
I can't get up today. I really like when Gladys gave me those flowers. I should return that book to her.
Yeah.
Of one thing that if you are in a leadership role with young men,
Yeah.
this is a go-to piece of material to be like, if you're worried about what being a man is, and growing up into whoever you're supposed to be, if you think you need to be tough to be a man, or you need to be this to be a man, read it. Read this from the Roman emperor. There's a lot of frames here that I think could help a lot of people of just where to put their thoughts.
Yeah. And that was my fifth topic as well, the uppercase, being a Roman emperor.
Yeah.
Just the humanity of that. It's tight to talk about.
Yeah.
If somebody's talking about, oh man, everybody's talking about things they're struggling with, what's going on, how are you, how's your heart, this and that, you can just say, man, I just read this book, or like, this emperor, and it's his freaking journal.
Yeah. Chopping heads, taking names, but he's he's sitting around thinking about what it all means, and
how he's messing up, and
how he can be better, and what he should have done, and what he's glad for, and his regrets and his wants, and that's fascinating.
I think that's the ultimate takeaway too, is like, do your thing. And it's hard. Like, nobody's saying it's not hard to do this stuff, because you look at this and you think, oh my goodness, good, if I want to follow this philosophy, like I have to journal, and I have to think about this stuff, and I have to constantly process my thoughts and feelings. It's like, that's the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. What it is.
It's good. It's not work. It's not bad. It's not a waste of time. It's good. It's the work. It is life.
That is the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Beautiful. Meditations to Himself by Marcus Aurelius. A banger, a hit, a classic.
Just a smash.
Back by popular demand. It'll probably resurge in 900 years.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to read that translation. Well, I think that just about does it.
Shoot.
Dang.
Gosh, flag nabbit. We talked about so much. We hope you enjoyed yourself, and that you'll use one of those 5 things.
Yeah, take one of these. Take something you learned out of here and try something. Try something new.
And then let us know.
Yeah.
Or let somebody else know.
Yeah.
Just
pass it on.
Pass it on. All right. We'll see y'all later.